Now, in just a moment, we'll be joined by Martin O'Shannessy. He's the head of Newspoll, which has come out with some potentially devastating figures for the Labor Party this morning. Labor Party's primary vote stays at a record low of 27%, but perhaps the most worrying sets of numbers in the figures out in this morning are those personal approval ratings for the Prime Minister, down to a record low of 23%. Martin O'Shannessy joins us now from Sydney. Martin O'Shannessy, good morning.
Morning, Michael.
And reading the figures, it does seem that that drop in the Prime Minister's approval rating is the most worrying sign for the Labor Party.
Yes, a couple of worrying signs there for Labor, one being the very high primary vote for the coalition, now sitting on 50%, which of course is as well as they've done since 2001, that rise in their primary vote that took them to victory in 2001 after 9/11. But also a very strong fall in personal satisfaction for Julia Gillard, taking her to a minus 45 in personal satisfaction, which is about as bad as it's got since Paul Keating had personal satisfaction of minus, let me have to look that up, minus 57, with 74% of the population dissatisfied with his performance. So pretty tough time for Julia Gillard at the moment.
What do you base that 6% fall since the last poll in Julia Gillard's personal standing?
Now, it's very hard to say, what caused that, but clearly the last fortnight has played out very badly for Labor and Julia Gillard. Obviously, the Craig Thompson thing just won't go away. The overturning of the asylum seeker plan by the High Court, and maybe Julia Gillard's reaction to that, I think have both hit her personally and, of course, have knocked out any growth back from the very low 27% that the government got as a result of announcing the detail on the carbon tax. And strangely enough, that seems like a very long time ago.
Now, the primary vote is still on at 27%. Do you believe that has bottomed?
Well, it's been there 3 times in the last 5 news polls, and we haven't seen lower for Labor. You never say never, but I certainly think that Julia Gillard hopes that that's the case.
On a two-party preferred basis, you have the coalition with 59% to the Labor Party's 41%. If an election were held based on those figures, how many seats would the Labor Party lose?
They'd lose another 30 seats, in fact 40 seats, and that would displace 9 ministers. Now, if that were a uniform swing, of course, 9 ministers would be displaced by that 40-seat loss. Now, maybe 2/3 of that is more likely, but that would still be devastating for Labor, losing 30 seats, taking them down to somewhere around 40, 44 or less in a 150-seat parliament.
You have Kevin Rudd garnering more than twice the support as Julia Gillard as preferred Labor leader. Why do you include Kevin Rudd in a direct matchup against the Prime Minister?
Well, that's very interesting, because Kevin Rudd as Prime Minister was always more popular than Julia Gillard, even when he was deposed, and so only a narrow 5% lead to him at the time that he was deposed as Prime Minister. And I guess the question is always asked whether that was a wise move on the part of the Labor Party, given Julia Gillard's poor personal performance.
OK, but why do you continue using him as a measuring stick against the Prime Minister? Why not include, say, Greg Combay or Bill Shorten, for instance?
At the moment, that's not a question of candidacy, and it's clear that the switch between Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard has had an effect on the performance of the Labor Party, and their performance has continued to decline since that point in time. Now, maybe that was an attempt to halt a slide that was already there, and that's probably true. Maybe that caused a further slide. In either case, clearly what's happened to the leadership of the Labor Party is a significant part of the problems that they're now experiencing.
OK, Martin O'Shannessy from Newspoll, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Always a pleasure.